Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Have I got this on Zoom? That's on Zoom. That's not. Sometimes I accidentally hit that button and it zooms just a little, makes it awkward. But what I wanted to talk about was things that I discovered as a result of my experience today. We went early, well, let me say, how did it go? We got back in the afternoon after going and trying to get paperwork done. We went into Taliban. As you probably may know, we are still in the throes of getting paperwork done, and it just seems like it's never ending. And even in making an application, there are requirements that you have to come up with. So we were in town and we were doing that, and we came home, and when we got home we were actually just resting, and Nana came up from her house, which is the first place that people go to because we're up slightly higher ground, and she said that someone had come to see us. And I interpreted that as someone had come that I would have to know the language. So I woke up Beth and we went down, and she went down at first, and it made me, well, I've often said that in our mission to help, we have taken on sometimes things which in an ordinary everyday situation we would probably have to have a lot of training to do this, just to be able to keep our focus and not get knocked off our spot, you know. The same way that someone who works in the emergency room, especially in perhaps a violent area, and they have an emergency room, they might get gunshot wounds, bad accidents from automobiles, who knows, stab wounds. There's all kinds of stuff goes on in the heart of really rough areas, and nurses have to be able to deal with that and yet still go home to what we hope are happy families. I know that not everybody's able to do this, and I found it was very difficult. And today we had a lady came up to see us, to ask for our help, and it was a terrible shock to me, because I'm really not that good of it, of seeing harrowing situations, especially for small children, and it affects me badly. And this little child was not much more than about, I think, 12 or 14 months old. No doubt you will see the video eventually. We don't do it to shock. It's an everyday thing for us. Sometimes we go through these situations where we see a lot, and we have to handle it. I did take a photo on my phone. I'll show it to you. Now you can see that little boy is in the arms of his mother, and he did have encephalitis, which is the same as baby Faith, who we lost recently. She struggled with life for quite a time and then finally let go. Well, you can see that this boy has actually had a shunt put into his skull, the same as baby Faith, and it drains down into, I think it was into his chest, I'm not quite sure, into his stomach probably. But this is something slightly different, and the swelling is right there between his eyes onto his nose, and very sad to see. Well, we felt that we were in a way, this is more about the way that an expat, a foreigner, will react to something that Filipinos seem to be able to take in their stride. Now, during the course of talking to this lady about the struggle that she was finding, she needed to raise the money to have an operation, same as baby Faith did, and she didn't have it. And she had actually taken a very proactive stance on this, and she was going to damn well go around and knock on every door and ask for whatever they could give. So very, very difficult for us, because we tend to think in terms of raising the entire money, and of course right now we're still not able to solicit funds. So it's a heartbreaking situation, and especially for a foreigner. Now, when we went down to the municipal hall, at one point, because, and I get this second hand, because Beth experiences it in her language, and then she comes over and she tells me, and when she tells me that something has happened and how it happened, it will often be tainted, if you wish, or coloured by her emotions, which is how this came across. And it seemed as if the lady that we were dealing with didn't understand why it was urgent for us to get the paperwork done. So getting paperwork done, and things take time. You know, you want the mayor to sign something, then the mayor has to look at your case. The case goes down to, I think, the vice mayor, and then it goes down to another department whose job it is to look at the proposal. What exactly does this person want? And then it's judged, and it is decided upon in a meeting. And when that meeting takes place, they talk about it, they look at the paperwork, they look at what has been said, what has been promised, what has been stated, and then depending on their decision, they will either say yes or no. And even when they've said yes, then it goes into another situation where it goes to another department, and the other department give their decision, and then it goes to the place where it's going to be typed up as a paper. And I've got dogs barking again. Always the dogs. So you can be told, well, you've been approved, it's been approved, but it needs to go here in order to have them say yes, there's nothing wrong, nothing more required, and it gets agonizingly frustrating. And when I saw this little boy, have to admit that the foreigner in me comes up, and here's the difference. This is why I would react differently to, say, a Filipino, and that is that I haven't seen this, I haven't lived with this kind of deprivation, of this kind of need. I haven't lived with that, because, well, in the UK you would go to a hospital and you would be admitted. I mean, there'd be no question about whether the child was admitted, and I believe in Australia it would be the same thing. In the US, they can't turn down a child for treatment, so it would be treated. It would go through. So when I observe what is the cultural difference in responding to what I see as a foreigner as being absolutely heartbreaking, I can't handle it in the same way. And when I saw this child and realized that we were going to have difficulty in trying to help this mother and this little child, and I said, we're going to go, and we're going to take this baby and the mother, and we're going to show them to this woman who seems to think that you just wait for the paperwork and it will come in time, in a few days you'll have it, and say, look, this is what we are trying to handle, and the paperwork is holding us up. That was my thought. Well, it turned out that as we got the mom and the baby and the kind man who was bringing them and helping them into the truck, and we drove and we went to the municipal hall, and it turned out the lady with the baby had intended to go to the mayor's office anyway. So she's sitting in there, and it didn't appall everybody like it did me. You know, the man that this mother and baby sat next to, and she was feeding the baby a bottle, and the man next to them was speaking very normally. He wasn't stressed or upset or heartbroken in the same way as I. He was very matter of fact. What is it that's what's the history, and just talking. He was waiting to go in to see the mayor with another party of other people, and then somebody else looked over and saw it, and I didn't see the stress or the near to tears that I felt any foreigner would feel. And in thinking about it, it made me realize that we are different because of the way that we've been brought up. And when you've been brought up to think that no child can be refused, well, they just can't be refused treatment. I mean, it's a child, so therefore the hospital has to. And it's not quite like that here. You go, and if you go to the public, yes, you may get that, but however long you'll have to wait is another thing. If you go to a private hospital, then it would be a private doctor, and he would have a fee, because that's the way of the world, isn't it? So it was a rough day, and it was tough for me to realize that I was the one that was wrong in my reaction, because Filipinos have been facing this kind of heartbreaking situation for a long time. It's improving incredibly, but it's still tough. Just an observation on the day. Thanks for listening. As a foreigner in the Philippines.